Welcome to the Tridion Docs 15 launch webinar. We'll be getting started shortly. I'm just going to give people one more minute to join. Okay, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone tuning in. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Fraser Doig. I'm a product marketing manager here at RWS with a focus on the Tridion suite of products. I'll be monitoring this webinar today, and I'm joined by our Director of Product Management, Joe Pearman, and VP of Global Solutions Consulting, Chip Gettinger. We're proud to be launching the new Tridion Docs 15 on May the 15th. And for the next 45 minutes, Joe and Chip will be discussing some of the exciting new features and benefits you can expect from this launch, as well as some of the key themes and trends that have inspired it. You will also get to see it in action as Chip walks us through the updated functionality. This session will be recorded, questions are encouraged, and of course there will be a Q&A at the end. We'll also begin the session with a short poll, and we've attached an infographic in the side panel for anyone who wants to have a look at that in your own time. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Joe and Chip, and let's get started.
Thank you, Fraser, and welcome everybody. This is Chip Gettinger. It's great to be together again with Joe and Fraser. And today we're really going to launch our Tridion Docs 15 release. Before we do that, Joe, I know Fraser was going to do a poll, but did you want to say hello?
Yeah, just welcome everybody. Very excited to be talking about the new release, and yeah, great to be presenting with you again, Chip. So it'd be good to good to launch the poll because we're interested in how long people have been with us.
So many of you have been longtime customers, and many of you are new customers. So and there's partners out there as well. So we're really interested to know what the audience is today. We're seeing really nice attendance. Thank you for all of you that are attending. So one quick news on me, I've moved. I'm now based out of Europe. I have a different background than the one that you've seen in previous webinars from me. So I'm closer in time zone to Joe now. So great, we're seeing the poll numbers come in, Joe, and it looks like about half of you have been 0 to 3 years, 43% at 3 to 10 years, and then about 7% plus 10 years. So Joe, it's really exciting. We have probably good 70–80% of our customers are here have been good length of time.
That's fantastic. Good to hear. But yeah, so many relative newcomers as well. That's very good news.
Well, I'll let you go, and I'll be back in a bit for the demo. Thanks.
Sounds good. Thank you, Chip. Yeah, I just wanted to run through a bit of what's in the new release. So a big theme is productivity without compromising accuracy, I would say. So we're all producing content that is you need to get it right, basically. There are consequences if we don't get the content right. And so, of course, it takes some care and real time to put in the quality. And of course, we're always looking to what we can do to reduce maintenance time, make the system easier to use, and really improve the quality overall. So a big difference for those of you using collective spaces, that's review space and draft space, the kind of more lightweight authoring and reviewing tools that we have that we would released in Tridion Docs 14. We've now shaken up the navigation. So the outline, the kind of the table of contents view, is now on the left, where it's a common place to put it, of course, in various other tools. So quite an intuitive place to put the outline. We've added in also kind of status icons against the various things, the various topics and maps in the outline. So you can choose what statuses you want to focus on, and you can choose the icons for them. There's a large array of icons that you can pick. It's actually from something called Font Awesome, and you can really set this up how you want to really work with your workflow and get people focusing on the particular objects that are relevant to them at the stage in the workflow. Also, the commenting has changed as well. So the comments themselves, the annotations on the content, they used to be a bit further over and a little bit separated. Now they feel much more in context alongside the topic that they actually relate to. And we together, of course, being the Fonto team and Tridion team overall, have done a lot of work to make this really usable and to think like, what if you only have one comment? What if you have loads of comments? What if you have loads of comments and replies, and really make this work well in all kind of situations. We've got some kind of smaller quality of life enhancements, as people call them. So the ability to now straight away save and share a comment. Now, in many situations, we find that reviewers would still like to kind of stack up their comments privately for themselves, go through a first round of commenting, and then kind of maybe go through again before they finally do share it to the authors. Nevertheless, sometimes you're ready straight away to just share the thing, and you might always want to do that. So now we have a button that is just directly save and share to save you a click there. Other things, you can configure the reason for change as optional, so you don't always have to fill that in. And we've got some other improvements as well for general kind of quality of life and suiting exactly the way that you work. Document history as well, so the quite granular, detailed view of revisions that we brought in. I think it's Tridion Docs 14 SP3. We brought in document history. Now that felt very much like a separate mode. You had to press the button; it would launch like a modal dialog. You'd go off into a separate place, and you would see these detailed revisions. We've now brought it much closer to the actual content. You have a timeline on the right-hand side where you can pick exactly the revisions that you want to see, and it's all much more direct and in line for that as well. So generally, really nice kind of further polish to collective spaces, draft space, and review space. And Chip will go through that later, showing you some of the innovations there. But we've also been working in what we used to call the web client. So we've done this all new organized space, which is, of course, the place where you administer content, you do content wrangling, translation jobs start from there, lots of things on the repository, templates, all of those kinds of things, users and settings, and that was well due a revamp, I would say. So the all new organized space. First of all, the new user experience, and Chip is going to demo this as well. It's based on what we call the graphene design system, so it's all very consistent. If you do use Tridion sites as well, then it's the same UX there. And one of the big differences that you'll notice is actually working with the repository content. It's no longer that kind of multi-pane thing where you would new users and sometimes experienced users such as myself will get confused over which button applied to which level, logical version, language. That always took a bit of training to do and a bit of getting used to. So we've now done a much more modern experience, so you can drill down more progressively through the logical versions and the languages and so on, and it's much easier to work with, I would say. We've also, when it comes to setting who can do what, we used to have this quite abrupt change. You were either an admin and you could do everything, even some quite risky things like, let's say, bringing a release topic back to draft or changing all sorts of settings. You were either an admin or you weren't, and you had some pretty strict limitations on what you can do. We had some feedback from quite a few customers that wasn't enough. You know, you needed something in between, that certain users needed certain power settings, but they didn't want like that full kind of ability to do everything and possibly mess things up. So we've made the permissions a lot more granular, and I think Chip's gonna demonstrate that specifically as well. Also, the search in organized space, it looks better, it feels better, and you can also search custom metadata as well, which you could not do before. And then we've spent some time on the extensibility. Now, of course, the old web client was extensible. You could add things into the UI there. We've recreated that in the new Graphene design system, and based on React, it's actually a much more familiar experience to modern front-end developers. So it's also an easier thing to develop against, I would say. So that's a few of the improvements to organized space, and just a quick preview of what it actually looks like here. It's much cleaner than it used to be. So these are all kind of user-facing things. So for content manager users, these are the things that you'll notice specifically. But we've made also some important changes to things behind the hood. So really to build people's confidence in security and performance. So security becomes a more and more important thing in compliance. All the time we get questionnaires from customers and organizations who hope to be customers about this stuff. So we're taking it very seriously indeed. So a couple of things that we're bringing in. So a modern authentication system. Authentication now done through the latest standard, which is OpenID Connect. Now this is, if you're familiar with SAML, this is kind of skipping SAML and going right to the latest, most standard thing. So all the kind of common identity providers that you might work with, Azure AD, Ping Identity, and so on, they all support OpenID Connect. It is both easier to configure, safer because you can't quite mess up so much for SAML. It is basically like a much smoother and easier modern way to do authentication. Now, authentication is never an easy subject to get into, so we do have substantial kind of training materials coming out on that. We've just recorded some bootcamp videos, very detailed, which we'll be putting out on the community website. So there'll be plenty of information on how to set this up because it does require a change in the authentication. And yeah, one of the things, if your organization is interested in multi-factor authentication, so that you might check also on your phone, not only on your laptop, it makes it ready for that as well. Of course, through your identity provider, but now you can do multi-factor authentication with Tridion Docs as well. We've also done a lot of revamping of the underlying code base. So the APIs that drive this, and of course, this is building up to a later release with a full public open API. But even now, we're kind of eating our own dog food in this way and using the modern API. Something to mention as well, not everybody may be aware that for the old web clients, we were using still some Visual Basic 6 code. And it's not necessarily something you want to shout about because Visual Basic 6 is a little old these days. And particularly Microsoft is actually going to stop supporting that in the OS as of next year. So it really is time to move away from that. And that's what we've done with the new organized space. So staying compliant with the latest security standards. And Chip, another thing to mention as well, we should probably mention the ISO standards that we are currently in the process of going through for the overall quality and compliance. I mean, this is more of a kind of external verification, of course, but still a very, very important thing to have this kind of badge to prove that we are treating quality very seriously. Chip,
It is, Joe.
Do you have some thoughts? Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite an investment on our part for many of our regulated customers. And we're also seeing security as a requirement for just about every customer we're working with now. So these are all really good investments for us.
Thanks, Chip. And also on modernization and revamping in general, so platform updates in Tridion Docs 15, we support Oxygen 25. That's the one that we fully tested, which was available at the time. I should also say that we allow now you to use more modern versions of Oxygen that come out because Oxygen does release fairly often. There is a dialog that comes up and prompts you, would you like to use it? And you can click that away and you can indeed use later versions. Now we haven't fully tested them yet because they they don't even exist yet. But generally, Oxygen has proved to be very backwards compatible, and we have no particular concerns about that. So it's a good thing as well. We have XMetal 17 as well. Now, in the last webinar, I somehow got confused and I said XMetal 6. So I was thinking, you know, should I announce Windows 95 compatibility today as well, just to keep everybody thinking, but no, it's XMetal 17 that we are supporting. And Windows Server 2022 as well, and of course Windows 11 on client machines as well. So that's quite a lot about what we've been doing kind of behind the scenes. But Chip, you've got a demo for us of how it actually looks and feels.
I do, thank you, Joe. And let me share my desktop now and show off the new. First, I'm going to start with the new organized space. And you see it okay, Joe? You see my desktop? Yet. Is it there?
Still looking, Chip, and I'm just getting used to the interface of this GoToWebinar as well, so maybe user error here.
Fraser, do you see my desktop?
I can see your desktop.
Thank you.
Thanks, Fraser.
Oh, great. Well, welcome again, everybody. And just as a reminder, please put in your questions in the question chat if you could. I'd like to show off some of the new capabilities. This is the new organized space. It's a really modern, intuitive, nice user interface. And I can navigate easily, to Joe's point, the various objects and publications and so forth coming through. And I also have the ability to expand and contract, you know, all the kind of modern things you would expect inside of a system. One thing you'll notice is this the new organized space is very responsive in its time. It's very nice performance-wise. We've been very, very happy with using it. There's some other nice capabilities, such as expanding and contracting out objects and so forth. And this is especially handy for those of you that have small screens and so forth. You also have the ability to select things here on the side as well and expand it back out. So some really, really nice capabilities and usability. One of my favorite things is the ability to have kind of dialog boxes that are more modal. One of the challenges with the older content manager was you could easily lose a pop-up. So now what we have is the ability to go in. I'm going to go into this publication here. And when I select it, I actually see the properties over here on the right-hand side instead of a pop-up. So the real benefit of just having this information. A new feature is the ability for you to decide some fields can be optional and can be hidden from SMEs. For those of you that have used Draft Space, Review Space, you've seen that before, but this now feature is part of Organized Space. Now, to that point, Joe mentioned graphene earlier, and that is the RWS look and feel here, the colors, the icons. And this is consistent across all of the RWS products. Those of you that use Tridion sites, or maybe you use the Trados Enterprise and other types of interfaces, all have this common look and feel now. So it's quite a years of investment on our part to really clean things up and make things look good. So some more advanced capabilities is some of the things that we've heard from customers is really it's important to have more filtering and listing capabilities. So I'm looking in my topics folder here, and you'll see up here I have the ability, for example, to filter by certain attributes or metadata that's part of the system. And this list right here is dynamic based on who the users are that have used the system. Or for example, I want to look and see all of the particular topics that need to be reviewed, or I want to see those that are in drafts. So again, this list is based on what happens to be contained in this particular folder. And this is true for images or illustrations, publications, maps, and so forth. So one of the nice features I like is the ability to select particular views here. And then I can also, let's do draft here as well. And then I can filter also to see, I just want to see the version 2s and so forth. And then we have the ability to do things like I can do, and I'm going to hold my shift key for multi-select, control and all the other aspects, or I have the ability to multi-select up here. You'll also notice that the toolbar up here will change based on my particular view of what I'm working on. So right now I'm working on topics, so I'm going to see these particular items or tool items up here. I can lock and unlock. One of my favorites here is I can do the download, which was one of the questions that somebody asked. Now, if we go to publications, things get a little bit more interesting. I'm just going to go ahead and clear my filters here. So inside of a publication, I can go and take a look at particular objects and so forth, and I can go to advanced areas. One of my favorites is the ability to add resources and other more advanced capabilities can be hidden from users. But you know, I do have the ability, if I need to go in and look at and browse in particular, and let's say add particular resources to libraries. This is another nice feature of the Graphene user interface. You can see dialog boxes that do pop up then are the focal point within the user interface. No more losing behind the particular web client window. So some more nice things, and then we're going to look at some the favorite part from Josh Steen, which is around the new settings capabilities. But let's go to a topic folder. You'll notice there's a button up here that I can come up here and add a new topic or new folder. Again, it knows this is a topic folder. And so now I have my particular templates that I can add in. And these are the same templates that you see today in Publication Manager, Oxygen or XMetal or in DraftSpace. But now we can go in, for example, and I can put in a task and I can say this is Joe's task. So we have some really nice capabilities, and I still can't spell. So in kind of a nice wizard kind of a feel. Again, here's the ability to show and hide different fields. And I'm going to go ahead and I'll add in, let's add Sherelle for the particular reviewer. And then I can save that. And that new topic then gets created into that folder. Another nice capability are error messages or other messages appear on the right-hand side in this corner up here. So it's a nice indicator that that particular topic was added to the system. So some other more advanced capabilities is revision history, which is a powerful capability that, of course, Tridion Docs provides. I think for most of you know that within each version of a topic, you can see the revisions, and those, of course, are the editing or saves or check-ins that happen from the authoring tool or DraftSpace. So I have the ability to come up and see a list of the particular users that have had the list. I can actually download this, I can restore, I can preview and see what that particular component looked like, and I can do the revisions. So again, these features were available in the web client, but really nicely indicated here and shown and so forth. So I could go on, Joe, but I want to go and look at some more, one of my favorite areas, which is around the search area. So search has been completely redesigned. It still has the same powerful capabilities, but I now have the ability to type in correctly when I'm going to type, and I'm going to look for Zigbee. And I also have drop-down menus, and I can say I want to have topics and so forth. What you'll also notice is that your configured metadata, list of value fields can appear. We can also now include fields from external taxonomies and so forth. So, but as soon as I apply this particular list, I'll see immediately a particular list of that particular, the results and so forth. And up here, you'll see that I have the ability to filter like I was showing earlier. So if I want to find everything that Sarah's been working on, you know, and so forth, the last modified. So again, these are all the nice filtering capabilities from a search list. You'll also notice on the right-hand side, my properties has shown up. And so And then finally, I have the ability also to come up here and let's search for publications. This is a feature that was added into Publication Manager. Now we've added into Organized Space. So I have the ability to come, let's say, and look for all of the particular outputs that are, let's say, using, pardon me, the PDF4 manual, and then I'll apply. So it's kind of a where is all this output used within the system, and I can see my results right up here. I also, and I meant to show this earlier, I have the ability to sort on any particular column, and that was true in the other list as well. So there's many more features, but let me get more into some of the more advanced capabilities. So for many of you that are system administrators or configuring the system, the XML settings have been updated as well. So we have really nice capabilities. And this is Josh's favorite feature, which is the line numbering on the configuration files here. And also you see the night colors. You'll also notice that the configuration file is still pretty much the same, but nice kind of viewing along here. Another nice feature, to Joe's point earlier, is the ability to come in here and look at particular roles and users' permissions. So one thing you'll note is we are jumping out of the Graphene interface into the earlier interface. So some of the less used menus will still be using the older interface, and they'll be updated over time. But of course, these aren't day-to-day kind of systems that are used. So one of the things we've added to this particular area are the privileges. So one of the questions people, or one of the requests we've heard from customers is, you know, I'd like for people to be able to see output formats, but not be able to see user management. So there's much more granularity that you have on your controls and so forth within the system, which was a really nice feature within that. So, you know, I could again keep going on, but what I'm going to do now, and by the way, I see my name up here. I'm going to switch over to another user. And I'm going to now be Nigel. So, hey, Nigel, I know you're out there, so I thought I'd log in as you. So what I'd like to do now is Nigel is actually come in here and launch Review Space. So I've worked now into a publication level, and you notice I have buttons up here, and I could just click on the Review Space button, and I select my language, and that will pop up Review Space in another tab. So very clean, nice icons, ability to go in and launch the Review Space capabilities. So now we get into Review Space. And to Joe's point, there's a number of really nice capabilities. Probably one of my favorites is the table of contents is now on the left-hand side. And a blog by our team at Fonto called it, that's where it probably always should have been. But so now we have the ability to navigate on the left-hand side for our outline, or of course, this is the map behind it. The other thing you'll notice is comments now have this bubble design. And quite honestly, we really are looking at other industry experts and other ways. You know, we know your organization's using systems like PDF and so forth. So we tried to make this look a lot more like that particular area. So change my notes here real quick. And so one of the things we have is the ability to come in. One of the new features, requested feature, is the ability to come in, and I'm going to add a comment, and I'll say, verify this detail. And there's a new button now where I can save and share with a single action. You still have the ability to share later the comment, and that keeps it private to you, but many customers wanted to be able to have that ability to see, to post it and then share it immediately. Another customer requested feature was the ability to filter both and see resolved and unresolved comments within the same review space and draft space. So now I can see earlier this particular comment was resolved, and I see that along with my unresolved comments. And there's other, of course, capabilities in the filtering areas and so forth. So, so that's really some of the nice usability features. Joe, did you want to add any to the comments, you know, how we're designing some of the design aspects? And then I wanted to go to DraftSpace a bit, but any quick thoughts before I jump to DraftSpace?
Crumbs, I think that would be a good blog topic, actually, Chip, as you mentioned.
Okay.
I mean, there's so much to it, but yeah, be good to have a look at DraftSpace now.
Okay. Another customer feature is the ability to sign out. This has been a long time requested feature, along with the new Modern Authentication that Joe mentioned earlier. So we do have that capability to sign out as well. But for convenience sake, I'm just going to move over to my my other browser. This is Chrome, and I'm going to go into the same data sheet. Now I'm logged in as myself. So I'm going to go into this particular publication again, and I'm going to launch it in DraftSpace so I can see the new layout as well. So I can actually see the outline on the left-hand side. And again, I see, of course, the comments on the right. So couple of quick things. In tables now have column headers and rows, much like a spreadsheet would. Those are new features. We also have the ability to see change column lists and so forth. And I'm not going to have time to show that, but within DraftSpace, you'll be able to adjust and have columns. Another new feature, I can say I'll fix. So I'm going to go ahead and reply and resolve this. I now have the ability to replace images. So I can come up here and I can say replace this particular image. Now, I don't remember I remember that I've got some kind of a block diagram image. So I can search it real quickly and then I can preview going, oh, there it is. So, you know, this search capability has been there for a while, but I can actually see this particular image. And now what we've done in DraftSpace is replace an older image with a newer image, and then all of the information around it, the figure title and so forth, remain and so forth. So last thing I'm going to show, and then Joe, I'm going to hand it back to you. And I should have showed this earlier. Well, two last things. You'll notice again, as I go through and navigate through comments, there's a really nice usability. So I know exactly when I'm on this comment, it pops out. I know that was a lot of a customer feature request. But Joe had also asked about the ability to see changes. So document history has been an optional feature for a long time. But there's a really nice new UI on the right-hand side that I can actually click and see all the different changes that have been made between different particular time periods and so forth. So it's a really nice intuitive interface to go in. And again, I can check on here and you'll see that the bubbles pop out and so forth. So a bit more intuitive as far as how we work on that system. So Joe, I'm going to hand it back to you, but any other questions or any other thoughts you have before I sign it back to you?
Well, thanks, Chip. Nice demo. Really nice to get a preview there. So no, just very excited to hear how everybody on the call, our customers, feel when actually using it in practice.
Great. Thank you.
So with a bit of luck, my screen should be showing up.
Looks good.
Perhaps, Fraser, you could confirm.
Yep, we can see it.
Very good, very good. Okay. So I wanted to change focus a little bit and now talk about content delivery through our DXD dynamic delivery platform. And I think maybe not everybody knows about it. Not everybody needs it, but for those who do, it's a very, very, very kind of reliable, powerful way to scale your content really across the web and beyond. So it's designed as a headless delivery platform, basically for use in Tridion sites. And when you think that we have kind of multi-regional kind of banks, airlines, and all sorts. You can get some idea of the kind of volume of content and the complexity and the need to be kind of quite reliable that comes from that. So of course we spent a lot of work over the last few years to also make it work very well with Tridion Docs, and that's a bit of a theme of what we've done also in the build up to Tridion Docs 15, because I think as of the last release, 14 SP4, it still felt when you were using DXD as a front-end developer, building a web app to deliver content, to build knowledge portals, it would feel a little bit as if it was looking through a lens of a web content management system at DITA content, darkly as it were. And so we thought that, you know, we really need to change this. We need to make it feel more native as doing this headless delivery for our content, for structured content, would be so valuable to do in a more native way. So that's exactly what we've done. So with less code, much more easily as a developer, you can basically, with a single request, using the GraphQL API, it's pretty much a standard for these things these days. Using the GraphQL API, you can bring up a topic and all of its metadata, all of its links as separate metadata, everything that you need in a JSON format. And JSON is, of course, an expected format these days in front-end development, and you can easily put that into the application that you build, the web app, even down to a single page application. This will work very well as well. So it's feeling as if you're directly talking with the DITA content and getting out the bits of metadata you would expect, rather than having to dive down, make multiple queries to get that. So it's easier, more productive, more reliable, of course. Generally, less code is just a good thing overall. And also we made some improvements to caching. Clearly in these kind of multi-regional, large-scale delivery scenarios, you will need to be caching content sometimes. Now DXD works better when you're caching on the client side, which you should be doing if you know about these things. And DXD also works better if you don't happen to have a client-side cache as well. So basically making it more efficient, more performant to deliver your content at quite some scale. But I wanted to go to another innovative thing that we've put into DXD. So I think a lot of people know that we invested quite some thought and time into getting more stable kind of metadata, more universal standards-based metadata, so that Tridion Docs can communicate with the outside world, of course, based on the SCOS standards, and using the pool party capabilities to do semantic AI, as we call it. Now, one of the things is, of course, last time we showed how this can make for kind of much smarter searches and nice faceted searches through DXD. But something that we wanted to do for a while is to say, what if, as an end user, you land on a page of content and you go, well, that's great, but you know, it's not enough in itself to reach my goal. You know, we often think of these little kind of cases as in Siri, what's the weather today, or something like this. A search as being a very granular little thing to which you can give one answer, one page, let's say, and you're done. But of course, in our domains, we're dealing with kind of complex information. You could be installing semiconductor machinery and you have to kind of really plan the environment and how you're going to do it. You could be applying accounting guidelines, all sorts of complex stuff where it's not necessarily that you have one page, a simple kind of steps 1 to 5 and you're done. What you really need as a user is to have connected content to kind of piece together your journey and understand how things work together as a system. And to do that, you need kind of intelligent linking, you need suggestions of the next good piece of content to do that. And that's not always been easy. So typical solutions up to now have been kind of expensive kind of magical boxes, if I can put it this way. You'll buy this system, it will claim to automatically do all your links. And then, well, it's not always quite as good as you would expect, and it certainly costs quite some money. Or of course, you could do manual linking, costs a lot of effort, it's hard to maintain and so on. Or you can do very naive kind of things with tagging, as in like very popular blogging CMS, where if you simply have some tags, then it will look for other blog articles that have the same tags in a naive kind of a way. So we thought, let's leverage. So if you're using the semantic AI module, you're already tagging your content intelligently. What if we can use that tagging to already recommend the next good thing that you should be looking at? Not just based on pure similarity, like am I talking about the same topic matter, but really focusing on, like, if you have different facets of your taxonomy to deal with user goals, products, geographical applicability, if you need to get all of those correct, it's likely that you're going to get recommendations for content that's more appropriate to you. So basically, this is what we have been putting in with the targeted recommendations for users, the service through DXD, powered by the semantic AI. Again, we'll have a lot of information in our training boot camps and documentation and so on. Just to mention finally, you know, I've put this as a kind of a low-cost, easy alternative to some other ways. Two other points about that. It's not so intrusive, so it doesn't require that you collect user data, which is often an important thing these days. However, if you have the permissions, you know, if you're confident to get your users' approval to use their data, or you have other data that you want to improve this, you can, of course, layer that on top. So this is a kind of an easy way to get started with some personalization of the content, but you can definitely build on top of that as well. So well worth looking into there. That about sums up this high-level view of what's in Tridion Docs 15. So very much encourage you to talk to your professional services rep or account manager and plan for your upgrades. The actual release is due out at least by July, so look out for that. I just wanted to have a quick look ahead, though, just at what we're focusing on next. Obviously, in product management, you know, it's almost like this release is done from my point of view, and it's what's coming next. Of course, we're planning into the future. And so just some hints of what's coming up there. So one big theme is going to be making Tridion Docs easier to own. So reducing the burden on IT, or making it easier to own from a cloud perspective if you've gone for that option. And so really taking advantage of modern cloud kind of architectural techniques to help all of our customers, whether you have Tridion Docs on-premise or whether it is actually in our cloud. One aspect of that is saying, you know, the desktop tools, Publication Manager and so on, have done a really good job over the years, and it's been quite some years now, and saying now people are more expecting more functionality to come to the web. So that is going to be a big focus of our efforts coming up. Another thing, not quite so obvious, but of course, Tridion Docs is very customizable. You can configure many, many things. And for any of you who have been involved in that, you know you need to actually touch some files on the server, which is done okay, but now the time for doing this kind of approach has passed. It's much better to put such configurations in the database and make them available in the user interface rather than storing them in files. Even from a security kind of standpoint, you know, it's much better these days to not have so many files on the server. So we already reduced the number of files and we consolidated, so we already made upgrades much easier. So Tridion Docs 15 itself is going to be an easier upgrade than previous ones, and so on. But this is the next step forward to configure things more in the database. Raises interesting questions that you might have. You might say, what about Ditto Open Toolkit? That is file-based, I mean, by the way it works. And, you know, there are various examples, various things that we're going on, industry best practices for how we can still, you know, allow you to properly customize things like your publication outputs while not necessarily making you have to do that directly on the hardware on the server. And then just a hint, we're also looking at what more can we do to formalize a plugin architecture for extensions. Now, publication is one thing, so it's great that we have, of course, the publishing plugins, and we have some guidance on how to use that in a video. But we want to take that further. So things like UI extensions, other extensions you might want to put in. We want to more formalize kind of a plugin architecture to make it even easier for developers and IT folk to do this. So that's kind of the solid kind of back end side of making docs easier to own. I just wanted to go forward to something slightly more inspirational. Now, I hope this doesn't feel overly marketing oriented, or it may do, but it refers to real things that we've been working through in some detail, just to give a high level hint for now. So an idea of bringing enterprise data to content. And why would we want to do this? I think it's fair to say that in the world of documentation, Tridion Docs or any other way of making documentation, often users are experiencing content as disconnected from the rest of their interactions with the organization. If they're end consumers, they might think, well, why aren't I seeing the content that actually relates to the product that your organization already knows I have, or my recent interactions with support staff or whatever it is. Just the same, if your content consumers are actually internal folk like field service engineers, again, it's what's the most relevant piece of content that I should be looking at. And even down to the way that you interact with the content, it seems very kind of forgetful in a way. I would say that content teams as well, still kind of wasting some effort because, of course, we have to align our content with the rest of the enterprise data, the data about our product structures, the way that parts relate to the whole machine, they relate to each other, and so on, for an example. And so, of course, we protected content management as a kind of an island. We've said, we have to be able to write real words, real prose, not just have content as little tiny blocks of isolated data without a context. This is the good thing about content creation. We can tell a story. We can let people reach their goals by understanding the contextual picture and not just getting these tiny little chunks. So we've kept content separate, I guess we can say, for good reasons. But now it gets harder and harder to say it should just stay this little island in itself. So we've been looking at various techniques where you can use your enterprise data, like the data about the product structure itself, the way it fits together, use that as a kind of a model or template for building content projects around, more of an emphasis on projects as opposed to just publications, and then give suggestions to authors as well for what other content might be reused to match this product model. So this is what we'll be looking at as well. And I think the other aspect is to say that, well, it's not that every content consumer, every content user all the time wants to see a big whole picture of the world. Sometimes they do just want one answer. But on the occasions when they do need to understand a little bit more how things fit together, it's very helpful to be able to browse the content almost as a mirror or model of that content, of that product structure, I would say. So we're looking at ways for end users to be able to explore the domain through the content. When you mentioned linked parts of a machine, for example, you're clicking through to them. Fund management, a completely different domain, but also very interesting for structured content. We have some customers looking at this. And when you're talking about the component parts of a fund, an investment fund, again, how do you link them together and understand the relationship, and how do these components contribute to the fund makeup overall, the fund profile? And just to wrap up on that user experience, also looking very much, of course, at the recent developments in AI and saying, there's a wonderful aspect of this. Whatever our concerns about, making up information, hallucinating and so on, one of the really good things, I think, is actually the conversational interaction, to say you talk to this thing and it remembers your conversation. It's not like those chatbots of a previous generation where it would seem to forget what you said one sentence above. So this conversational interaction is a great thing, and we're looking at how we can best give very reliable information as a basis for that, not making stuff up because we can't afford to do that in our domains, but giving reliable information to base these conversational interactions on. So that's a little bit of a hint or a taste of the area we're looking in. We are looking in some detail. This necessarily involves all areas, not just delivery, but the way we manage publications more as projects, the way we author content and get suggestions, and more help without it taking away our sense of control and ownership, allowing us still to create, human generated content, let's say, and get the value of that. So something to think about. But for now, of course, we just spent a lot of good time building a wonderful product in Tridion Docs 15. Very excited about this, and please do contact professional services or your account manager to discuss your upgrade. Thanks very much. Now, I think, Chip, we'd love to hear any questions that the audience has.
Yeah, Joe, there's been some good questions here. Damien asked about when will Tridion Docs 15 be available, for downloads and installs for testing. What's the time frame for availability?
So general availability, I've been saying July, now I'm saying by July. It's a possibility it will squeeze in at the end of June, but I think it's still safe if I say July for now. So I think watch this space.
So great. Then they'll be available through the standard methods that everyone's used before. Great.
That's right. Yeah.
The other thing, Joe, maybe you want to talk briefly about the boot camps that will be coming. The boot camps will be available on the community page, correct?
Absolutely, yeah. And so these are quite detailed, in-depth training videos on not only the new features and why they're there, but very much on how to actually use them and what you might want to consider. So these are very much for implementers, could be our partners, could be directly for customers, but it's a more technical angle on it. We've divided these videos into several themes. You know, overall, I think we've got about 4 hours of material, so it's quite detailed, but we've divided into, for example, modern authentication, organized space, collected spaces, and so on. So relatively bite-sized chunks, if your bite is relatively big, I would say.
Great, Joe. And there was a question about, and this obviously be covered in the boot camps, the ish remote scripts will be upgraded or updated to support Tridion Docs 15, correct?
Correct.
So automate the installs, those will be able, that will be covered during the boot camps.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's another good questions about inboxes. Are they available on organized space?
Oh yeah, they are.
Okay, didn't show them.
Yes.
Okay, great. Let's see. That is July 2023, Damien, correct? So for the date, so just a few months from now. So for the release of Tridion Docs 15, as well as Tridion Sites 10, which will be coming out around the same time frame.
Mm-hmm.
So
exactly. Yeah.
I think I covered almost all the other questions in the chat area. I think there's some really good detailed questions that probably be better covered offline or through the boot camps. So Fraser, if we could get an export of these questions, we'll make sure we follow up. There's a few that I didn't want to ask here because I think we might have to do a few research. So Joe, thank you very much. Excellent Q&A and excellent session today.
Thank you, Chip, for the great demo, and thanks, Fraser, as well for moderating. And thanks everybody for attending and listening.
Yep,
Excellent.
Thank you to Chip and Joe. I found that was a really informative and interesting session, and I'm sure that everyone in attendance here has taken something useful from it and gained an insight into what makes Tridion Docs 15 so exciting to the community. So thank you. All that's left to say is thank you to everyone for attending. You'll all receive the webinar recording shortly. If you do have any follow-up questions or you would like to talk about upgrading, then as Joe mentioned, please just speak to your account manager or a professional services professional. And yeah, once again, thank you for joining and have a great rest of your day.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.